I am Kyle.
And I'm Trevor. And today, Kyle will be catching up on cinema.
Yes.
So, last time around, Kyle selected a movie for me. A movie which I had never seen before, but a movie that was apparently very near and dear to his heart, much to my surprise.
I wouldn't say near and dear, but I say worth a watch.
Okay, I'm stretching things a little bit.
Yes.
Point is, he picked the movie. And the movie he had selected was Dan Aykroyd's Nothing But Trouble. So, this time around, I got to pick the movie. And the movie that I selected was called Undisputed 2. Last Man Standing from 2006.
I should have known it was going to be a Scott Adkins movie that you'd pick first.
So, Kyle and I used to work together, shoulder to shoulder, and oftentimes we'd find ourselves talking about movies. And there was this one actor / martial artist that would come up in conversation, always brought up by me, because, of course, Kyle has no idea who this person is. And that person is Scott Adkins. Who is Scott Adkins, you might ask?
Can I actually just jump in real quick?
Okay. Fine. You can talk.
Okay, so Scott Adkins, or as I like to call him, the Fury of Ray Parks.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So Kyle has a running gag where he likes to get in the heads of like Hollywood actors and what it must be like to be in the casting room for other movies. So for the example that comes to mind, Skeet Ulrich. Imagine what it must have been like to be Skeet Ulrich at the height of Johnny Depp's powers. So you're in the waiting room, you're waiting to audition, you're Skeet Ulrich, and then you see that Kentuckian motherfucker come through the door, and you just decide to leave.
I think it's probably hard to be any actor at the height of Johnny Depp's powers.
Yeah, but just picture their faces side by side, and just imagine what it must have been like to be Skeet Ulrich.
Ugh, I don't want to.
And Kyle's not wrong. Scott Adkins and Ray Park both happen to be British. They both happen to be fairly short men that are very acrobatic and immensely talented martial artists. But they also happen to be contemporaries who both have very similar skill sets. Also, anemic acting talent, to be honest.
If you don't know who Ray Parks is, he played Darth Maul in Episode 1, which he's the only good part of that entire movie.
Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Yeah, I think Peter Serafinowicz did his voice, though.
They wouldn't even let him talk.
No, they wouldn't even let that motherfucker talk.
He's also, Toad or... What?
Yes, he played Toad in the first X-Men film. Right around the same time. So that was the wave. That was the Ray Park wave.
He has a very, very funny cameo in
Fanboys?
Fanboys.
Yeah, you showed me the clip. That was genuinely funny.
It was really good. Anyway, sorry, go back to
go ahead. So, little bit of setup before we get into the details of the movie. So Scott Adkins, the reason why I picked this movie is because this was the first time I took notice of Scott Adkins. Now, I have a DVD shelf over there on the other side of the room that Kyle's eyeing right now that is packed to the hilt with martial arts films. It's a genre that's very important to me. And oftentimes I find myself like going out of my way to follow the careers of stunt actors, guys who my dad used to call them that guy. So like Michael Ironside, for instance. My dad could never be bothered to learn Michael Ironside's name, but that guy's face and that guy's voice, holy shit. Like you know that guy when he walks in the room.
They're
it's
iconic,
like it's like, oh, that guy.
Yeah.
And like Danny Trejo before Machete and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. He was that guy.
Yeah.
Character actors. I'm that way with martial arts actors, where there's always a stuntman who usually doesn't talk, but he's usually in the background, and he's there. As soon as you see him, you know he's going to fall down some stairs or something, or he's going to do a flip, or after Jackie Chan's beating up everyone in the room, that guy's going to be the last guy, and they're going to go at it for 3 minutes.
They're guys that you say, this is the part where you fall down.
Yes, exactly. Wipe yourself off. You did! But yeah, so Undisputed 2 came out in 2006. I was in college at the time, and I remember this movie, despite being released direct to DVD, actually got some TV time. Like, they actually advertised it on TV. I think I was watching, like, Spike or something, obviously.
They advertised Smoking Aces too, so that does not surprise me.
Okay, maybe that doesn't mean maybe that doesn't hold as much prestige as I'm making it out to.
Jesus.
Shut up, Scott Adkins is my boy.
Anyway,
so The only other movie up to this point that I had seen Scott Adkins in was Unleashed. I think it was from a few years prior, starring Jet Li. Good movie if you haven't seen it. Fun movie. Well acted. Bob Hoskins is kick-ass in it. He's great.
Was that his last role?
No. He was around for a while after that. This was like 2003.
Okay.
Anyway, Scott Adkins and one of the other people in Undisputed 2, Silvio Simak. He's a big Croatian motherfucker. The two of them have a scene. There's like a 3-on-1 fight with Jet Li. It's the centerpiece of the whole movie, basically.
Oh, Boyka.
Oi, Boyka. Inside joke. Sorry. But Scott Adkins basically just plays I think he's just like named Gladiator or something. Pool Gladiator or something. He has like spiked hair. He looks kind of like a Backstreet Boy. He still has the baby face because it was like 2003 at the time. And he's wearing like BMX gear or something.
Oh, everybody was.
Yeah. And he's notable for handling a spear/staff pretty well and doing a backflip.
So that was his first role?
No, it wasn't his first role. It was the first role I ever saw him in.
Okay.
So this was like 3 years prior.
Okay.
And I didn't take notice because IMDb wasn't really a thing for me yet. And I wasn't that into it just yet. So
I think people were still using dial-up at that point, so just jumping onto IMDb.
That was a whole production. It's like, am I gonna look at porn or look up martial artists on the Internet Movie Database?
Put your hands together.
Yeah, it's like, do the math. Which one are you going with? I mean, you're tying up the phone. Come on, man. Like, time is of the essence. You can't do both. So yeah, the first time I saw him was Unleashed. And that was like 3 years prior. And of course, I didn't take notice to who he was. I remember his contribution to that movie, but I didn't know his name. I didn't know his background. Now, flash forward a few years later, and Undisputed 2 comes out on DVD. I'm in college. I'm bored off my ass. So I run out to Best Buy on the strength of a commercial I saw on, of course, the Spike Network, because this movie has MMA in it, by the way.
To say the least, yes.
The testosterone levels are through the roof in this movie. Yeah.
Oh, jeez. I think there's one female character in the whole movie. And that was for their safety.
I think she was just like standing in the background of one of the bar scenes or something.
She's the number 2. Oh, no. I'm sorry. There are stripper/dancers.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
An actual character.
I was being polite.
The actual character.
Oh.
Yeah, there's an actual female.
There is an actual female.
But anyway, go ahead.
Anyway, so I go out to Best Buy. I buy this movie almost entirely on the strength of a single kick. A single kick.
Interesting.
I'm not sure if your brain recorded this because you've only seen the movie for the first time very recently.
Yes.
I've seen this movie several times. There is a kick that Scott Adkins does that has been nicknamed the Guyver kick.
I know exactly which kick you're talking about. So he basically goes for, I don't know martial arts, but I'm going to say a Ryu. I guess that's the kind of kick where we have, it's like a check mark. So we've got one leg behind and then the other leg perfectly straight with the heel like trying to connect. He misses and then kicks with the other foot.
So he jumps up in the air with his left leg and does a leaping, spinning back kick.
Over his head.
Over his opponent's head. And then the other leg whips out and just with the strength of his knee hinge, just whips out and slaps the guy in the face.
Well, he has momentum.
Yes.
And the momentum is, basically...
But the point is, his hip isn't going into it. It's just his knee just whips out.
I thought it was a wasted effort, but we'll get to that.
Well, it's shot in beautiful slow motion. It sells well. It has impact, despite the fact that in real life, I'm sure it has none. But
before we get into the choreography, which I do want to talk about, the fight choreography, which is mostly what this movie is going to be about, or our discussion is going to be about.
Probably.
Do you want to give the rundown? Because just real quick, this Undisputed 2. I've seen pieces of Undisputed 1. I kind of remember it was like Ving Rhames is going to have to fight Wesley Snipes in prison. Only thing I remember is, what's the dude from Short Circuit? Fisher Stevens.
Yes, he's in the crowd. He's
talking shit. Yeah, and then Ving Rhames is like, "You want to fucking do something?" Okay, that's all I remember from the first movie. Hey,
don't forget that Peter Falk is in that too. Columbo. He's the guy who puts the fight together. Anyway,
go ahead.
So yeah, I saw this movie on the strength of that single clip in that commercial. And there's a movie that's on my shelf. It's called Guyver 2: Dark Hero. Biggest star in that movie, David Hayter, who does the voice of Solid Snake. In the video games.
Metal Gear Solid?
Yes. And also wrote the first X-Men movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Anyway, that's besides the point.
You want to do the plot? Let's
get to the plot.
Give them the plot.
But what the point about the Guyver thing was that that same kick is featured in that movie.
Okay.
And that's why it gets the name the Guyver kick. Anyway, so Undisputed is a franchise film. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is the sequel. I decided to start off with this one because my emotional attachment to the first film was nil.
Yeah.
The boxing scenes in it are pretty good in the sense that the two guys have the physicality to sell it. Wesley Snipes obviously has no problem selling the fact that he's a boxer. Mm-hmm. He's a lot more lithe than Ving Rhames, who's built like a fucking truck.
Yeah, he's a linebacker for Christ's sake.
The two of them, their scuffles together are pretty good. But the central plot of the Undisputed film, which actually does directly carry over to the sequel,
yes,
and only the first sequel. There's 4 movies in the series, by the way. The first 2 are directly connected, and the last 3 are directly connected.
Oh, gotcha.
So Ving Rhames' character in the first Undisputed film he's the heavyweight champion of the world. Came out at a certain period of time where a certain Mike Tyson was, getting rape charges and going to prison, and we have a similar setup with his character where he is champion of the world, loses his title and goes to prison. I don't think he loses it in the ring though. He's stripped of his title. So the plot of the first Undisputed film is he goes to prison. He's kind of a prima donna,
yeah, and
he swings his weight around. He feels he's above the prisoners, mm-hmm, despite being charged with rape and assault and stuff like that. They do a good job of leaving it ambiguous as to whether or not he actually did it. Mm-hmm. But the point is, he is heavyweight champion of the world, but in the prison, Wesley Snipes is the champion of the prison.
Blade.
So Peter Falk sees that there's a fight coming, so he makes arrangements to make everyone a lot of money and get the two of them to fight each other in the prison. And spoiler alert, at the end, Ving Rhames loses.
Good. The
heavyweight champion of the world, who, as far as I know, is supposed to be like undefeated in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
But he gets out of prison. He serves his time and he comes back into society. And the end of the movie is he is shown winning back the title, and like Wesley Snipes is having a laugh about that, where he's like, I beat him, but I'm still here.
Yeah.
So the sequel swaps out Ving Rhames for Michael Jai White.
Yes.
He's a monster in this.
Just real quick, he is. If he's not on HGH, he like it's the first when they introduce him with his shirt off.
Yes.
When you see him with his shirt off, I let out an audible. Fuck.
Fuck.
He is like cut like a professional athlete. Like he is jacked.
Yeah.
Just crazy chiseled. Yeah.
Yeah. No, one of his man boobs is the size of my entire torso.
It's not a joke.
Yeah.
But same goes for Scott Adkins, because he's not a small dude.
He's not as well. Funny enough, he actually is, but in terms of height.
Oh, height. Yes, he's short. But anyway.
Go ahead. So yeah, the sequel, the setup is. An indeterminate amount of time has passed, and Michael Jai White is playing the same character. He is no longer heavyweight champion of the world, though. It seems like he's retired, maybe.
Oh, so Michael Jai White is supposed to be Ving Rhames.
Yes. He's the exact same character.
I did not realize that.
And it's kind of a neat angle, because early in the film, we have a scene where he is doing a vodka commercial.
Yes.
And it feels like straight out of Lost in Translation, where Bill Murray's doing his liquor commercial in Japan. Mm-hmm. And this is the fate of actual pro athletes a lot of times, is... you don't have skills outside of what you bring from a physical standpoint. So you need to find other ways to, secure your brand and make money. Yeah. So it's not unrealistic to believe that a ex-heavyweight boxer with a rape charge on his record is now doing vodka commercials in some part of Eastern Europe. Yeah. And the long story short, the movie is about him being wrongfully accused of drug possession somewhere in Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
And he gets thrown into a prison, and he can't seem to find his way out because there's a lot of corruption keeping him in there. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that the entire impetus for this wrongful imprisonment is that there is a prison champion who Russian gangsters are profiting quite a bit from. But it turns out that they're actually losing money now because he's so undefeated and undefeatable that they want this American heavyweight boxer to challenge him and potentially dethrone him so they can make a shit ton of money off of the betting odds. So he finds himself in a situation where he's basically forced to fight Scott Adkins, who plays the antagonist of the film.
Boyka. Yuri Boyka.
So basically the film ends up being like an hour and a half journey of this guy finding himself in prison, learning a little bit of humility, and throwing down with Scott Adkins a couple times, and eventually escaping from prison.
Yes. Yes, he does get out.
Well, he gets out legitimately.
Yes.
So yeah, that's our basic plot summary. There's not much to it. It's a pretty basic straight-to-video martial arts film.
Yes.
But it stands out to me in a lot of ways, but I'd be very curious to hear what your first impression thoughts of it were.
Well, first of all, I'm not I'm not a martial arts movie person, nor am I really a sports movie person.
Okay.
There are some exceptions. I do love Any Given Sunday. Remember the Titans, Friday Night Lights. I like the football movies.
I was about to say, you can basically name 3 football movies.
Although I would say that Any Given Sunday is a little bit different in that there is games, but it's also kind of showing the behind the scenes of the NFL and kind of how it's corrupt.
Well, it attempts to inject a little bit of reality to the proceedings.
Greatest sports movie of all time probably is Miracle, just because if you watch that actual match, between USA and the USSR, it's pretty fucking incredible.
Also, Kurt Russell doing the best Chicago accent you've ever heard.
Yes. But yeah, so I'm not really much into sports movies or the fighting movies. I did like The Fighter. I thought that was good, but that was more drama than it really was.
That was a family drama with fighting.
With Christian Bale being a crackhead. That was the movie. Was Christian Bale being a crackhead.
He and the mom stole that movie for me.
Really good.
Marky Mark was the least part of it.
I don't really like Marky Mark.
He was the smallest. Amy Adams is good.
Amy Adams is good. Oh, yeah, she's playing pretty trashy too.
Oh yeah, she did that well.
But anyway, so I was actually, when he said Undisputed 2, I'm like, okay, that's a fighting movie, and I know I kind of recognize the title. And then I looked it up, and the first thing I see is Scott Adkins. I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm actually just going to mention something now. I am going to try to keep this on track as best as possible because Trevor is a huge Scott Adkins fan. Deservedly, I would say. Once we get into the choreography and how he moves, I'm like, I completely understand why you wanted me to watch this movie. I found it more watchable than I was expecting.
I think so. I think so too.
I was kind of dreading it at first. I'm like, okay, it's gonna be a fighting movie, but
well, also direct to video.
Yeah,
shot in Eastern Europe, probably.
Yeah, legit in Eastern Europe. But I feel like I needed some more exposure to Michael Jai White because I've heard Black Dynamite is really good.
Michael Jai White is a very talented actor. He has a lot of charisma. What's funny about him is, aside from Black Dynamite, to me, he always seems a little uneasy playing, I guess, more streetwise characters. Because he's very articulate and measured in his temperament.
Gamble from Dark Knight.
Yeah.
Is that what it is? Yeah. I liked him in that. It was a very small...
Enough with the clown!
It just sounds like it was a spawn. Enough with the clown. Wanda! I actually, when I saw it was Michael Jai White, I'm like, okay, I've heard that he's a really good martial artist, and I actually saw a video of him teaching Kimbo Slice how to punch.
Yeah.
I don't remember what movie it was.
No, Michael Jai White shows up at a lot of boxing and MMA matches and stuff. I think Kimbo was in Blood and Bone with him.
Is that what it was?
Blood and Bone is a direct-to-video movie that Michael Jai White starred in that had I think Kimbo might have been in there. I know for sure Bob Sapp was in there. Warren Sapp's cousin.
Okay.
Even bigger than Warren Sapp. He's fucking monster.
We do, but the one thing that Trevor and I do talk about is we do like MMA. I don't watch it as much anymore. I was introduced to the UFC when it was steamrolling, in the late 2000s when it was just getting huge.
So this was around that time.
Yeah. So this is just pretty much right around that time. I am really excited for McGregor's next fight.
Khabib.
Yeah.
Nurmagomedov.
Yeah. Side note. Anyway, so my first note is the choreography is sped up a little during the fight scenes, which I wasn't really expecting. one thing I did notice immediately, the guy that he is fighting, he's got to be on some kind of PED.
Oh, are you talking about the first fight in the movie?
The opening fight.
Yeah, that was Silvio Simak, the gigantic Croatian guy I mentioned that was also in Unleashed with him. Yeah, he's on something.
He's on something. But Scott Adkins...
Frosted highlights are probably not actually highlights. It's probably just his actual hair just like juiced.
Well, I did notice something. They did use quite a bit of overhead lighting in the fights to really get those six-packs to pop. But first thing I noticed was that, okay, these dudes are legit martial artists because I'm like, I see kickboxing all over the fucking place, especially with Scott Adkins. You can see... He's got that Jean-Claude Van Damme. I can put my arm in, or I can put my leg up to a K, basically.
Yeah,
It's no joke. But I did notice that the fight scenes were kind of sped up. Now I don't know what that was for.
So both the fights are both sped up, and they do something called ramping, speed ramping, where the most mainstream example that comes to mind is 300. Where you slow down, speed
it up.
And they do a lot of that. This is something that I hadn't noticed in a lot of, at least, American action choreography too much at this point in time. Nowadays, it's old hat. But at that time, it was kind of uncommon. The funny thing about the choreography in this movie is that you say it looks speed up.
It looks sped up.
It looks sped up. That's very, very, very common. Jackie Chan, Bruce Lee, all those guys do that. It's just how filming is done.
Yeah.
A lot of it, I think, has to do with safety and precision. The thing about the choreography in this movie that I noted was that it's actually a little slower than I remember it. But the camera choreography, the camera movement is beautifully in sync with the movements, where they do a lot of high-low kind of stuff, where somebody will flick out something up high and then the camera will tilt very rapidly down low, and the action is always in the center of the frame and very clearly focused. So this movie is directed by Isaac Florentine. He's an Israeli fella. This is a very Israeli production, actually, now that I mention it. Isaac Florentine, Avi Lerner produced it. He did pretty much like all the classic action stars, but like after the fact. Oh, okay. So like imagine like Stallone in his twilight years, and Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren, pretty much anyone who was in the Expendables after their star had waned.
Gotcha.
Avi Lerner was involved in that.
So pretty much everybody except for Arnold in the 90s.
Yeah, and then Mark Ivanir, who played Gaga, the Russian gangster guy, he's fucking awesome.
I love him in that.
Yeah, we'll get to him.
Yeah, but, I love that dude.
If you look up his fucking IMDb...
He's been in every movie.
He's been with Hoffman.
He's been with Hoffman?
He's been with Hoffman.
Philip Seymour Hoffman?
Yes.
Wow.
He's worked with Spielberg. He's worked with Hoffman. He's like
crazy.
He's like an acting god.
That's pretty crazy.
And yeah, he's like Israeli Ukrainian or something.
I mean, Philip Seymour Hoffman was in Twister and Along Came Polly.
No,
so.
this movie is like, there are 4 stars in this movie, and he's one of the 4. And Hoffman's with him.
Oh, wow.
Like shoulder to shoulder. This shit's real.
Okay.
So you might want to look him up.
All right.
But yeah, we'll get to him because he's fucking awesome.
Yeah, I like him.
But yeah, the choreography in this movie, a big part of why I think it's handled so well is that the director is Isaac Florentine. And he, again, Israeli, so he did time in the military. I think he was actually a martial arts instructor.
I think they all have to do at least 2 years.
Yeah,
so that makes sense.
I think he did like 3, and he was a martial arts instructor outside of the military. So he's very well versed in martial arts himself before a film director. So, and in addition to that, most of his filmography prior to this movie was direct-to-video stuff, but also episodes of Power Rangers, where you need to put together choreographed fight scenes with multiple people on a budget and on schedule.
Yeah.
So for him, fight choreography is probably something that's like, not only do you have to be good about it, you got to be quick.
Yeah.
So working in a direct-to-video environment is probably suitable for him.
Okay.
And the choreographer of the movie is this guy, J.J. Perry, that nowadays, so this is then, nowadays though, you'll find his name attached to the largest film productions in the world. He is one of the foremost choreographers going, and this was him kind of getting rolling, and it shows. Like, the choreography is very distinct, it's very unique. The only problem I have with it is wrestling fan in the room. Some of the storytelling gets a little muddled, and maybe we'll get into this later, but I found the final fight to be a little anticlimactic and somewhat disappointing because of that.
Well, we know who's going to win the last fight.
We do.
It's pretty obvious. This is a movie. We know who's going to win the last fight. So I did have a couple questions.
Let's get you in on this.
So is Scott Adkins, has he ever been a stunt double? Because he looks like Ryan Reynolds' stunt double on the nose.
He was in X-Men Origins Wolverine.
He was the stunt double?
Remember when he had his mouth covered at the end?
Yeah.
The Deadpool
Oh, that was Scott Adkins?
All those trick flips and shit?
That was him. I didn't realize that.
That's not Ryan Reynolds. That's Scott Adkins.
Did they let him come back for Deadpool?
I didn't see his name in there.
Oh, man.
I know. That would have been fun to have him just be like an anonymous henchman in the background.
That would have been pretty neat.
Or, I mean, that's a fourth wall joke right there.
Yeah.
Just like Deadpool calling out his own stunt double.
But for Deadpool, everybody has to get the jokes. Yeah. No, only five people are going to get
Now you know the struggle that is being Trevor and being a fan of this person who no one knows.
Gosh.
You know, when I was in the theater and I watched Doctor Strange with my mom, because that's what you do, the front credits, so you know how the Marvel movies, how they have like the mid-credits stinger and then the post-credits stinger? Yeah. So because the credits are 20 minutes long, because all the Thai, Korean, Japanese CGI animators, they do something that's like an animated front credit. So it's just the only cast members they list are like the director, the writer, the producer, and the principal cast. Scott Adkins made the front credits of Doctor Strange. He didn't even say a word in that movie.
Jeez.
But I think I was the only person that did an opera clap for that in the theater. I was like, oh my god, my boy! You're my boy! You're my boy, Blue!
So, and then another question I have, and I think you answered it now just by going over the first Undisputed movie, is Yuri a prisoner? Is Scott Adkins' character a prisoner?
Absolutely.
Okay. Because it seemed a little... Because he's basically... like. I don't think that Wesley Snipes' character in the first movie was running the prison. I feel like he probably got like Andy Dufresne perks, like nobody really messed with him.
Yeah.
But Yuri runs that prison for the most part.
Yeah.
It revolves around him. All the prisoners are afraid of him. The warden is afraid of him because he's tied in with
the gangster.
With the
Gaga.
Yeah, Gaga.
But yeah, me and may as well talk about him a little bit. So Yuri Boyka is now a franchise headlining character. So this movie represents the first time this character was featured on screen. It's pretty much Scott Adkins' first semi-leading role. He had worked with Isaac Florentine before in a movie called Special Forces, where, again, he was mostly just a physical element of the production. He was just there for the action scenes, really. And he was impressive. And this was like 2002, 2003. But he didn't really talk. At that point in time, I think he had done The Accidental Spy with Jackie Chan. So again, he's not there to talk. He's not there to contribute anything to the drama other than getting kicked and looking good falling down. But this was the first time he got like a role where he was expected to act and carry portions of the film. And they do a lot of weird stuff in this movie that I won't defend his acting, because his accent is kind of garbage.
I will defend his acting.
You will.
I will defend his acting. I will not defend that accent.
No.
That is...
It gets better by the time you get to 3 and 4.
What is fucking...
Ivan Drago?
Yes.
Dolph Lundgren?
It's on par with that. That's essentially what's happening. But I do think that S.A. is... he's very intense with the character, and
he is.
I feel like he's got a lot of intensity, but he has to channel it through that cartoonish Russian accent.
Yeah, he has, to quote Indiana Jones, he got a mouthful of wobble-yous. He's chewing on those wobble-yous. He's supposed to be a Ukrainian prisoner, and what's interesting though is that even in this first movie, because he's had 2 more movies that were entirely his. So how
the fuck can he have... I saw the end of this movie. How the fuck does he have his own movie?
Well,
he's done.
No, now you got to see the other 2 because they're actually better, I think.
I'm not watching those other.
Oh, you're no fun. But what's interesting, I think, about the portrayal of the character is that there's a lot of thought put into it that didn't need to be there. Because this is a direct-to-video MMA movie.
Yeah.
And the soundtrack tells you right away this is a direct-to-video very
the
cheap.
lighting makes you know.
I will defend the lighting.
Ish.
The music I won't, because it sounds like it came out of a Casio keyboard. Beverly Hills Cop, Beverly Hills Cop, Axel Foley gonna get those drugs. But yeah, what's interesting to me about the characterization of Yuri Boyka is that even in this first go around with him, where he's the antagonist, so his screen time is fairly limited outside of punching people and stuff. The quiet moments you get with him, he's always doing something interesting.
Yeah.
The first time we see him, he's praying. He's a very pious character, and this actually carries over to the sequels.
Interesting.
It's a part of his character.
Now, is Scott Adkins? Is he? I don't know if that has anything to do with his personal preferences.
I don't think so.
Okay.
He's British and not at all Russian, and the friendliest guy you'll ever meet.
Well, that doesn't mean he's not religious. I didn't know if that was just.
No, I don't think he is. And then we see him playing chess. We see him stamp collecting. He's always you can.
Well, you have to get into the mind of his character. His character
is
confined.
Lifelong prisoner.
He's confined,
and you get the sense that like he has all this anger, but he also has these quieter, more focused moments. So there is some complexity there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they don't explore it too much, but it is kind of interesting to see a character who throws his weight around all the time and commands this prison, and yet has this daily routine and these hobbies that really do reflect the fact that he is a prisoner,
yes,
and is probably not going to be getting out anytime soon. I think I remember seeing interviews with Scott Adkins where he actually said that like the key to playing the character is just being angry all the time and just snarling every time he talks. I don't think he's as effective at it in this one. It does come across as like something from Rocky and Bullwinkle. Like he is a little cartoonish, and he's also younger. And I think the character works a little better when he's a little bit older and has a little bit more gruffness to his voice. But as an antagonist, it's kind of interesting that he's more just a physical threat. The actual evil people in the plot are more the gangster and the corrupt manager of Michael Jai White's character, more so than the actual guy he's fighting. Who
I believe his manager is a famous TV writer. I think he wrote for Cheers.
That's Ken Lerner, I think.
Did he write for Cheers?
He's been on a lot of TV shows. I know him mostly as an actor, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was a writer, because I also wouldn't be surprised if he was related to Avi Lerner.
I think he's a writer, but I really don't know. He's a little bit out of my generation. So he is... Michael Jai White is... in Russia, Ukraine,
Eastern Europe.
They talk like Eastern Europeans, in a cold place. So he gets set up. They were trying to get him in prison, and he gets set up having drugs, which I guess is a huge deal there. So they basically just send him to prison. No, I don't think there's
no trial.
No trial.
They just throw him in a truck and take him there.
I guess because. At least in this country, you typically are in jail for a little bit until you are sentenced to prison.
Yeah.
In this case, you're just sentenced to prison.
Well, I mean, it's a cheap movie. I'm sure and it's a fighting movie. They just want to get it, get it to where it needs to go.
I don't want to pick it apart. I don't.
Yeah.
It's
but
fine.
The main thing to take away is that he is wrongfully accused.
Yes.
So there's some gangster fellas, presumably hired by Gaga, to plant the drugs in his apartment. And also his manager is in on it.
I thought this was interesting. The prison is basically run by the mob, which was so. This is why I'm assuming this is Russia, because I remember this was actually happening in Russia, 80s, I guess maybe late 80s, early 90s, something like that. As
soon as the wall came down.
Yeah, it was just basically run by the mob, and that's the thread that they're going with. So. He thinks that he's getting out. Like he's just kind of.
As soon as he gets there, he's like, "I'll be out in a few days anyway, so I'm just gonna." I think he doesn't even want to leave his cell for the most part until he's urged by his roommate Stevie, cellmate Stevie. Rather. Oh, Stevie.
Why did they? So at first I'm like, isn't it convenient how he's paired up with the one British person in this prison? But I thought about it. I'm like, as far as a prison goes, if you know that this guy only speaks English, send him with the other guy that speaks English. So
send
that
him
actually
with
makes
the guy with the drug habit who speaks English.
It actually makes a lot of sense. When I thought about it.
I actually kind of like Stevie as a character. I thought he was very sympathetic and complex enough that.
And you know he's gonna die.
Yeah, you know he's dead.
You know he's dead. Like I thought they were gonna kill him as a motivator. Like I thought they were gonna.
Yeah, it's funny actually. The plot progression of this movie is a little goofy because it's like Chambers, aka Michael Jai White's character, George the Iceman Chambers, goes to prison. He gets shacked up with Stevie, and Stevie is meant to be like his handler. So he was planted there by the gangsters because he has a drug habit that they use to control him. And when it finally comes time for Michael Jai White to fight Scott Adkins for the benefit of the mob, because of course they're placing bets on these fights and televising it from the prison, Stevie ends up betraying him, and I forget if he kills himself out of guilt.
It was guilt.
Yeah, so he ends up drugging Michael Jai White's water in between rounds because there's rounds in these fights, and then Michael Jai White ends up getting woozy in the ring and gets knocked out in their first encounter. And then shortly thereafter, I think right after, so Michael Jai wakes up in his cell and he's all bruised and battered, and then he finds Stevie hanging with a suicide letter.
Basically, Michael Jai White's character learns jiu-jitsu. That's what this movie is. Is like, you're a good fighter and you were definitely going to beat him, but now you've pissed him off and you have to learn jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, so we may as well get into that. One thing I like about the first fight in particular between Scott Adkins and Michael Jai White is that, so Boyka, Scott Adkins' character, is his mantra, like his motto is, I am the most complete fighter in the world.
Yes.
And to the credit of him and the choreographers, they do a very good job of showing him to be just that.
Yes.
His versatility is immense. Like, he does flying kicks, he does low kicks, he does jabs, he does crosses, he does jiu-jitsu.
I didn't see a single time where I was like, that was wire work. Like, he's jumping around like
there
a crazy
is none in the movie as far as I know. In fact, I remember watching the special features, and the only time they used stunt doubles was 2 falls that they do. One is in the cafeteria when they tackle each other. Mm-hmm. So they just have a little scuffle and they just fall onto a breakaway table.
Yeah.
I guess Michael Jai White insisted on having a stunt double for that. And when they, at the end of the first round in their first fight, they go over the top rope and fall out of the ring.
Yeah.
Again, stunt double
That's
there.
fine.
Other than that, neither of them had doubles.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so they did all their own fighting moves and no wires, because this is in the post-Ong-Bak world where that meant something. Because the ubiquity of wirework after Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon was redonkulous.
I don't think Americans knew what wirework was until Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
No, we were using it. We had it. It's
that blatant. Besides The Matrix, I think.
I think the worst wirework I've ever seen is, well, I think they're both directed by the same guy. I call it the Kung Fu Hip Hop Connection. So this one guy, I can't remember his name. I wish I had it on the tip of my tongue, but Exit Wounds, Romeo Must Die, and Cradle to the Grave. All these movies have 2 things in common: kung fu and hip hop.
DMX or DMX.
Aaliyah.
Aaliyah.
Yeah, Aaliyah and Romeo Must Die.
I think DMX is in 2 of those.
Yes, Cradle to the Grave. He's the main character of Cradle to the Grave. It's not a Jet Li movie. It's a DMX movie.
Interesting.
Anyway, Romeo Must Die and Exit Wounds have the worst wirework I think I've ever seen. And Romeo Must Die, Jet Li looks like he is literally on a playground swing when he's kicking Anthony Anderson in a fight scene with Jet Li. And then Exit Wounds, 250-pound Steven Seagal on wires.
Ooh, he's breaking that shit.
It's beautiful. Tom Arnold's in that movie. I wish he had been on wires. I would have loved to see that.
Would you say that Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon has good wire work? Because it's blatant. Like it's obvious.
So
you can very much see it.
Teaching moment.
Go for it.
There is a subgenre of film.
Okay.
Wuxia.
Okay.
It's basically like fantastical, like Chinese period film. So it's kind of like how Japanese have like kabuki plays.
Okay.
And there's an expression my grandpa used to use when he was watching pro wrestling. As Japanese, shibai means fake. And so he would shout that when the pro wrestling looked phony. And
how do you say it?
Shibai.
Shibai?
Yeah.
Okay.
So wuxia, that's part of the aesthetic. There's an expectation that the costumes will look a certain way, the style of drama is more operatic because that's where it comes from, stage performance. And the wire work is
supposed to be.
It's supposed to be phony.
Oh, okay.
It's supposed to be kind of hokey. It's kind of phony.
Okay.
So it's a cultural difference.
Okay.
So yeah,
Gotcha.
I would say it's very good.
Okay.
The wire work, that is.
Because that's what it is servicing. It's supposed to be. Okay.
Yeah, the thing about the first fight, though, between Scott Adkins and Michael Jai White that I like is that Scott Adkins prefaces things by saying, "I'll beat you at your own game, fists only."
Yeah.
Point is, this is the former heavyweight champion of the world. Obviously still in fucking great shape.
Yeah.
Miraculously even better shape than he was in the first movie, even though, because Ving Rhames is not gonna. I mean, he's a big guy, but next to Michael Jai White, no, not in the same league.
That's a difference between a wide receiver and then a DT. Two different positions, two different physiques.
Yeah, that's right. So, what happens in the first round of that first fight is that Boyka does try to fight him fist for fist.
He does,
and it doesn't go well, which is appropriate.
Yeah,
I mean that's what at one point the best boxer in his weight class in the entire world fighting a guy in prison.
It's the McGregor Mayweather discussion. It's as soon as he's
out of his element.
As soon as you put him out of his element, he was beat.
It's Steve Irwin versus that goddamn Stingray.
But
he was out of his element. He belongs in a swamp. He doesn't do oceans.
Get him out of the ocean.
Yeah,
God damn it.
If I was on that boat, goddamn it, get out of the ocean.
Get out of the ocean.
Get away from him. He wants you on the rope, Steve.
Yeah, but the thing is, as soon as you put Mayweather in the octagon,
it'll be the opposite.
10 seconds.
Yeah, it'll be even worse.
Any experienced MMA fighter is just
I mean, we've seen it already with James Toney and Randy Couture.
Okay, so the first fight.
Yes.
Michael Jai White is more or less poisoned.
Yes.
But doesn't Yuri decide that he's going to just start kicking anyway?
What happens is, and this is a little bit of a flaw in the choreography, and this happens a couple times in the movie, where people take an unreasonable amount of damage and just miraculously spring up.
Yeah. He was getting his ass kicked.
The first fight in the movie with the giant Croatian guy, Silvio Simak, you'll remember he gets some wild kicks and gets felled and gets grounded and pounded.
Yeah.
And then Scott Adkins gets up and roars triumphantly, and suddenly the Simak stands up behind him and is still ready to go. After he had his face turned into a hamburger for 20 seconds straight.
Did you see Green Street Hooligans? Have you seen that?
I've seen the third one starring Scott Adkins. It's on my shelf.
You might be catching up with that one. I won't give away any spoilers, but there is a ground and pound, and you feel it. It's legit. So I think that actually might be, because that's mostly a fighting movie. So that's gonna be on the docket.
Third one.
First one. We're gonna watch that first one.
Okay, maybe. But yeah,
anyway.
he gets his face clobbered in after receiving several spinning fanciful kicks, and miraculously springs up to his feet, and then once again gets a pretty awesome kick and goes down finally. And in that first fight with Michael Jai White, Boyka gets knocked and falls face first onto the mat.
Yeah, I thought that was down. So what I thought was going to happen with the plot was that he was going to win his first fight, lose a second fight, and then stay to win again. He was going to win on a technicality on the first one, and then lose the second one, and then have to fight him a third time and overcome. But that was wrong.
I think that's... I mean, this movie is struggling to fill its 90 minutes to begin with. Well,
this is direct to DVD, so who knows where this is going to go.
So what happens after Scott Adkins falls face first is, unlike in real life when that happens and they wave it off immediately, he miraculously just pops up within 10 seconds and actually calls out Michael Jai White and says, "Hey!"
Well, remember, this isn't an MMA fight. This is actually a boxing match. If he's sticking with rules, so he should get a count technically.
Yeah, but just the fact that he got up.
Yeah.
If somebody falls down face first, that means they're out cold.
Yeah.
And they aren't getting up.
No, because you see the life just go from them.
Yeah, if they don't even catch themselves, they're gone.
They're done.
And you don't want to see them take more because they will die.
Yeah.
Anyway, he springs up to his feet and he says, "Hey!" And then they resume fighting. Mm-hmm. And immediately after that, Boyka turns into Boyka and starts throwing leg kicks and starts doing some wild shit.
I will give the movie credit. They do, if you watch MMA fights at all, especially if there's a title, if there's a fighter you like, and they might be a prelim, they might not be the main event, but you're enjoying one of your fighters. But if this is a main event, and you get down to that 15 seconds where, like, oh no, he can take it right now.
Yeah.
There was actually one of those moments in that movie. I'm like, oh shit, he's gonna get him right here. But it actually didn't happen. I'm like, oh man, they actually kind of got me there.
That's the kind of stuff I would have expected to actually see in this movie that I didn't. Because obviously there's corruption, given that there's poisonings like spiking of water and stuff. Something they did in Ip Man 2, where it's a corrupt fight. So it's a British boxer who's favored to win versus a Chinese man. Basically what happens is there's a scene where the round's about to end and the British guy's coming on strong, and so you actually see the bell ringer like grab hold of the rope to ring the bell and then pause for a second before he rings it.
Ooh.
To let him get that one big punch in before the end of the round. That's the kind of stuff I would have expected to see. But then again, the thing is with Scott Adkins' character, even though he rules the prison, Gaga actually wants him to lose. So it's kind of interesting that you have two parties at play. You have Boyka's boys, like his gang, and then you have Gaga pulling the strings on the other end. So Boyka has his own support system independent of the gangsters. But yeah, so the conclusion of that fight is that Boyka comes on strong in the second half, but the conclusion is tainted by the fact that Scott Adkins, his crew, swap water bottles with Michael Jai White. They use Stevie to do it. And yeah, the very beginning of the second round, he comes out and has nothing and gets kicked and gets knocked out.
All right, so let's move on to after he loses. Now we know there has to be a mentor. There's going to be a mentor coming in.
Yeah.
I honestly thought it was going to be his cellmate, but it's actually a character who I can't remember his name. The guy in the wheelchair.
Krot.
Nikolai.
Very Russian.
He is basically going to be in his corner because the guy he had in his corner was the heroin addict.
Was Stevie.
Yeah, was Stevie.
They did a good job of showing that Stevie was an incompetent corner man.
Yes.
Like when he's working the pads with him, he has to teach him how to hold the pads.
But the guy in the wheelchair, he cannot use his legs. Which is interesting because he was an Israeli. Was that he was?
Spetsnaz, I think.
Okay,
that's why he's Russian.
He basically is the one that's going to teach Michael Jai White jiu-jitsu.
Or Sambo or Russo or whatever system of grappling.
Basically, I'm going to break your arm if you don't stop.
Yeah, yeah. I think he actually asked him if he knows how to fight, and he's like, "No, I know how to break people."
No, I know how to there's an interesting montage. Because you have to have a montage. This is a fighting movie.
There's many montages in this movie.
But they have a montage where you have 4 squares, where it's 2 of them training and 2 of them working out. It's all kind of happening at the same time, which I'm like, okay, speed this montage up a little bit. Yeah. I get that. What was I going to say? But yeah, so Michael Jai White is still not getting it that you're stuck here. So to hit the nail on the head, he actually has a meeting with Gaga, the mob boss.
Yeah, this is a turning point in the movie.
Now, he's your typical smoking cigarettes, telling people what to do, smacking people, threatening people with death kind of thing.
Yeah.
Good threat that he had was, you're pissing me off. If you fuck this up, I'm going to hang you by your balls from the tower. I'm like, holy shit.
I've been saying this a long time. Threats are better if you have specifics.
Yeah, that's a very that gives you an image and you know the pain.
It's not just I'm gonna hurt you. It's like, no, I'm gonna do this and this and this and this.
You would think that would help the movie Law Abiding Citizen. Actually, it's a little corny when he brings it on. It's just not. Yeah. Anyway, Gaga has my favorite line of the movie.
What's that?
When Michael Jai White goes, "So you the big dog?" And he goes, "Yes, I'm big dog." Ruff.
Yeah.
The little rough on the movie. Ruff.
Yes, I'm big dog.
Ruff. It's just so good. I had a legit laugh at it. I had to write it down.
I really thoroughly enjoyed his performance. He's also in the third one. Not in the fourth one, unfortunately. But his character is interesting because he's like Walton Goggins when we were talking about the Predators movie. How you're not supposed to like him, but you do.
He's just so affable.
He's just so endearing. And what's especially interesting about the second film in relation to the third film is that I think the producers got wise to that. So by the time we get to the third one, he's like full on good guy.
Oh, okay.
Like he's backing Boyka in the third one.
Gotcha.
Whereas in the second one, he kind of has like an antagonistic relationship to everyone. Like even the warden, he's constantly threatening him. Michael Jai White, he's basically coercing him into fighting for him.
Yeah.
And Boyka, he grudgingly supports because he's the best fighter, so he can't just like
he's stuck there.
He can't forcibly remove him. Like he can't just kill him or something.
This is what's interesting is I rewatched Snatch not too long ago because my dad hadn't seen it. I'm like, I think you'd really enjoy this movie. And we also watched Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. Still really, really good.
Okay.
But we were watching Snatch, and Bricktop, his whole thing is that he's setting up these fights, these underground boxing matches. In this movie, they're actually... He wants him to win. Like, they're not like he needs to fall, which is what I thought was going to happen. I'm like, you need him to make sure that he goes down in the fourth round.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen at all. He's actually, like, getting pissed. He's like, he needs to fight. And now you have to start training because you have to beat him.
Yeah. A big portion of the movie is actually just maneuvering Michael Jai White to fighting Boyka.
Yeah.
Because, like, Boyka comes after him right away, but it's more just like a prison scuffle, not like a step towards an organized contest. So, like, Gaga is, like, poking at the warden, like, trying to get him to want to fight. And so, I forget if the shoveling shit scene happens before or after the dinner.
That's what leads to the dinner, I do believe.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, when dinner happens, that's when he goes down there because like you're just still not. No. Is it the shower? Maybe
that was right away.
That was right away.
That was the very first thing.
And then
But the shoveling shit scene, I do think it happened before the dinner because what happens is the warden. Basically, Michael Jai White's character is very resistant to being in prison. He picks fights with the guards and the other prisoners constantly, because this is a direct-to-video movie directed by a martial artist, so why not have as many fight scenes as possible? And what happens is he gets punished first to like clear out the one drain in the entire prison, so it's basically just a pool of shit where you shovel, and then he has to go in the equivalent to the hole, which is basically...
theirs is awful.
Awful. It's legitimate. It's portrayed in a good way where it's like this actually does seem bad.
I would have given like just immediately. All right, I'm done hitting you guys. Whatever you want to do, because it is the basement which is flooded in it's freezing in this place. It's winter.
It's snowy outside in every shot we get.
It's freezing in the prison, and they send him in a cage with water. They throw him in the water first. So
he's waist deep in water filled with rats.
Yeah.
And there's a grating above his head and very little natural light, if any.
He's freezing.
So he is freezing cold, and it's only because Krot gives him some
soup and bread
and pills for his fever that he survives. So after all this, the warden comes to Michael Jai White and tells him that, things could be a little better for you if you just fight this guy. And it's that kind of gets the ball rolling. That and Stevie urging him to, I think he even basically says, like, stick to the program.
Yeah.
Basically, he's trying to, there's a theme, especially in the first 2/3 of the movie, that it's like, accept your place. Like, that's the theme of the wheelchair man, Krot, or Nikolai. That his mantra is that I've been in here so long, and the way I survive is that I understand this is where I am and this is where I will be. Whereas Michael Jai White's character has that very American mentality of just like, no, like there's always a way. Like, I'm gonna get out of here.
So when he does decide, spoiler, he does decide to fight. And I think this is when he goes to see Boyka training, and Boyka has got some kind of arm bar of some kind. I'm not real sure. He straight up breaks this dude's arm in training.
Yeah,
he's just running through people like a mountain dude.
Yeah, I don't know how this guy has friends. Like,
he's an absolute asshole. But he's got mob. I guess he's got mob protection.
No, that's the thing. These are his guys. Like the guy who drugged Stevie.
Yeah.
It's one of his guys.
Yeah.
Like they're loyal to him.
Oh, he kills the fuck out of that.
He
dude.
kills 2 guys.
Yeah.
And even his trainer, the guy in his corner, he cuts his finger. He cuts his thumb.
He cut his a little bit, so he kind of had that coming. I get what he's saying.
Cause like it's a different world, Trevor. You wouldn't understand.
Can you imagine? Just think you're a professional athlete, and let's just say we'll say you're a football player, and you go in to see your trainer, and he hits you in the knee with a fucking like just he's using a hammer on something, and he hits his kneecap. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me?
He hits
That's my career.
Yeah, hits your
knee.
$16 million knee.
Yeah, he's gonna punch him in the throat.
Yeah. But there's just another one of those weird little scenes that it could have been nothing. It could have just been him being mean or like stomping around his room, but it's him getting his wrists unwrapped by his trainer, and the trainer accidentally like nips him in the wrist, and in retaliation Boyka takes the scissors from him and cuts his thumb.
What I do appreciate about Boyka is that he is not a cheater, which is what I was expecting.
He's a religious man.
He's a religious, but he does flip out when he finds out that they drugged him.
Yes.
And
it's important for him to know that he actually won.
I appreciate that in the villain. Like, oh no, he's honorable.
Well, that's what I like about him as a villain, and this is something that I like to see in movies, especially sports movies. Is the understanding that even in a contest, there doesn't need to be a completely antagonistic relationship between the two people. Mm-hmm. The guy who the protagonist is fighting doesn't necessarily have to be complete utter evil.
Yeah.
In this case, like in Boyka's case, he's a jerk, but it's a prison. There's gonna be jerks, and he does have morals. Like he does have a center to him. Mm-hmm. So he's a slightly complex character at the very least. They could have done the Van Damme format or the Rocky IV format where Boyka, well, I can't remember if Stevie killed himself or was killed by Boyka's handlers, but Boyka didn't do it by himself. Boyka didn't order it.
No, Boyka didn't order it, but Stevie kills himself.
Okay, so
it's guilt.
See, in most of these types of movies, what would have happened is Boyka would have hurt somebody close to Michael Jai White, and that's what would have forced the conflict.
That's what I was thinking was going to happen.
And I'm glad they didn't do that.
Yeah,
because it's like that doesn't need to be there to force the motivations between the two characters.
Michael Jai White.
Boyka's just an obstacle.
Michael Jai White is absolutely believable as a badass. Like anytime that he's getting into a scuffle, I'm like, oh, he's gonna fuck you up. Like, you're gonna be hurting. Like you may win the war, but he's going to win the battle. Like he's gonna smack you around. The other line I really liked because it's a sports movie. He's like, "What are you waiting for? The bell." I just thought that was good. I'm like, oh, nice.
That actually plays into the climax of the movie, the final fight.
Yes, final fight.
So, the final fight in the movie is a rematch between Boyka and Chambers, and the difference this time around is that now Chambers is wearing the USSR trunks given to him by Krot, which somehow fit.
Yeah.
Krot must have been really big when his legs worked.
He must have been.
He must have been jacked.
Yeah.
But the difference this time is that instead of using pure boxing techniques, now Chambers miraculously learned all the jujitsu.
All the jujitsu.
That is one of the dumbest elements of the script. The time that he learns all these things is unreasonable.
If you spend a month, I'd say if as a professional athlete, this character, if he spends a month on 2 moves. And I'm talking like he's got all day to he's got 8.
He's in prison. He's not going anywhere.
He can practice in the gym. He can practice in a lot of places. I think that it's believable that he could pull off one or two moves. However, he needs to know how to counteract the counter.
Yeah,
that's the thing. So yes, I do believe that he could pull off one of these moves. However, when he gets the fucking horrific leg break. I knew it was gonna happen too. I'm like, it's gonna happen. And then I like the CGI right after that.
It was the only CGI in the movie. It was pretty good.
I could tell it was. Yeah. It was. That's the only time I ever noticed it. But the fact that he's not countering, I think, might speak to the talent of Boyka, because Boyka, like I said before, he's breaking dudes' arms in practice.
Oh yeah.
So I feel like he doesn't really have a worthy adversary or somebody worthy of actually training with. He's taken on 2 dudes at one time, and I think that might have, like, he thought he was the best, but he wasn't actually training with the best. So,
well, I mean, another thing, I guess, and it's still not believable because the time is what complicates things. Because a professional boxer moves an entirely different way than a mixed martial artist. Yeah. Like, regardless of what discipline of mixed martial arts they put focus into, just boxing has different principles to it.
Yeah.
So it would have been more interesting, I think, if he was taught defense, like how to anticipate the kicks and how to check them and how to deal with them, rather than implement them into his own arsenal. What is slightly defensible is the fact that Krot, I think, is supposed to be ex-Spetsnaz or something, and martial arts like Krav Maga and like Russo are developed by the military, meaning their techniques have killing principles rather than self-defense.
Yes.
So things like joint locks, it's not so much you're going to tap this person, you're just going to off them.
Yeah.
So one could argue, I guess, that if a skilled practitioner and something like that, if they were to get into a grappling situation, might have a slight edge. But again, it's not defensible because the idea of him picking this up in a weekend is just silly. But it makes for a decent fight. I do feel that it's slightly unbalanced, though, and that's where my disappointment comes in, is that Boyka is not, again, in wrestling parlance, booked to be as strong as I would have liked. It's not as even a fight as I would have liked. Because it covers 3 rounds, the second of which is like sinfully short. It feels brief.
Because
like,
it goes do-do-do, and then
it feels unreasonably short.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't feel like there were 3 rounds. It feels like there was 1.5. But yeah, Boyka is shown to be not as formidable, to the point that it's almost kind of a letdown, because the moves he does up to that point in the movie are incredible. Like, he's making shit up in midair, and they showcase it with the editing and the angles in such a beautiful way, to the point that when you see him put on his heel so easily in the last fight, it's disappointing, because you want him to do well, even though he's a jerk. And by the time we get to the last round, that stupid fucking song starts playing. Yeah. It comes up at least twice in the movie, and even works its way into the 4th, I think. God, that song's embarrassing. Yeah, the last round of the fight, the "What are you waiting for, George?"
Yeah.
The bell.
Yeah, the bell.
The entirety of that round is just him deciding to win, and it does not feel earned at all. Because there needs to be a progression in the flow of the fight. You need to see that we got here through struggle of some sort, as opposed to just the next round starts and all of a sudden he's just winning.
Well, how he wins is it's interesting, because I wrestled, so I know what it's like to be. It's a weird situation to be in, because sometimes it can just be quiet and you actually have time to think about what you have to do. Other times it's just automatic. You practice things so much it just comes second nature. So sometimes you get into a position where you're like, oh man, I don't know how to counter this. I actually have to think about what I'm doing. And you actually see him when he gets taken down, like that. That's his problem. Is he's pretty much it's like fighting Ronda Rousey. Like, I cannot get on the ground with this guy because I do not know what I'm doing. Don't get on the ground with Ronda Rousey. She'll break your leg. Yeah. But if you go toe-to-toe with her, Amanda Nunes, figure that out. But as soon as you see him go on the ground, you're like, fuck, now this is a problem.
Oh, yeah, the second round ends with him in a leg lock that they get split up because the bell rings.
Yes. So, but they get into what my friend, I want to call, he calls it... a 69-foot rub.
Oh, that's actually, yeah. I'll go with that. That's accurate.
So what he and his girlfriend would do is a 69-foot rub. They would sit on the couch on opposite ends, and you'd have, like, if you had a sibling, you would both sit on the couch and have your legs on the couch.
Smell my foot.
Yeah. But what you do is you have the TV positioned in the middle, and you give each other a foot rub. Mm-hmm. You just give each other.
Cradle each other's feet.
My girlfriend is disgusted by my feet, so she refuses to do this. But for those of you out there, 69-foot rub. But that's basically what the last bit of the movie is for the fight. Yeah. Is that Scott Adkins has Yuri has a vague lock. I don't know what this movie is. I don't know jiu-jitsu. Mm-hmm. But it just looks like he has his foot. I don't know if he's just like, if he's keeping one leg in place and then twisting the other one, which I wouldn't think that's a move. Or was he bending his trying to bend his ankle? I really don't know what the move was. It didn't look like a move. But Michael Jai White's in a position to get the hyperextension on the knee.
Yeah. So basically, Michael Jai White positions Scott Adkins' heel on top of his what would you call that? His lat?
Oh, right here on the shoulder, just like on the shoulder.
On his shoulder. Lat. Oh, sorry, deltoid. Right?
Delt's over here.
Okay. I know anatomy. Shut up. It's like he puts his heel on his shoulder, and then he cinches his hands over his kneecap and applies pressure, and it almost amounts to a compound fracture of his kneecap.
If you watch this and you see this, it like the whole time I'm like uncomfortable. I just know it's
gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
I think that is one of the most horrific things to see is somebody hyperextend their knee. Ooh. Because I can't imagine. I think you pass out from the pain. I would think, like, I would want to. Jesus,
okay. It's not a hyperextension of the knee, but one of the worst wrestling injuries I've ever seen was Sid Justice or Sid Vicious, depending on what era.
Mankind, Dude Love, Cactus Jack.
Yeah. Another nickname I guess would be Mega Mullet or a king, like savior of the rednecks, I guess.
What a rush. That's Legion of Doom.
So I'm talking like leather cut off vest and blonde curly Mega Mullet, greased up and a pug face, looks like made of leather. This guy's like 6'9" or something. Anyway, he jumps off the top rope, and he lands funny on his one foot, and the middle of his shin.
Oh, God damn.
Just miraculously bends sideways and turns to rubber.
Oh, God.
And the worst part of it, he's on his back, and his leg is elevated, so the rubber element is just dangling.
Oh.
And it's the bottom half of his shin.
Oh, it's so bad.
And it's like, put it down for the love of God, otherwise it might fall off.
I forgot there was a basketball player like 2012, 2013. I can't remember his name, but he just landed on his shin and it snapped in fucking half. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Leg injuries.
So, yeah.
They suck.
I watched the TV show Tosh.0. I think it's very funny, but he showcases videos on the internet that you don't think should be on TV because it's a lot of breaks and a lot of injuries and stuff like that. I've seen a lot of those, and I think maybe because of that, watching this movie, I was just like, oh, God.
It's like a butt clencher. It's just like,
oh, no, it's going to happen. The noise, and then the noise is like,
yeah.
Yeah.
No, what's nice about that sequence, like I said, the whole last round, I think, is a bit of a foul up. But that part, I do like that they cut back to the training between Crott and him. It's actually a very specific joint lock that he taught him. And you can see him, like, mulling it over, where it's like, he's pretty much won here, but then he's thinking to, you'll never get out.
Yeah.
And it's like, this guy's not tapping, and Boyka's, like, even yelling at him, like, I'm gonna kill you, motherfucker, and things like that. And it kind of puts him in, like, in a bit of a more positive light, I guess, the George Chambers character. Because when he breaks the leg, it's like he's weighing it in his mind. He's like, am I going to do this? And then he does it because he needs to win the fight.
He has to win to get out. Yes.
He has to win to get out.
And he's not. And this guy's not going to tap unless you break it.
No, Boyka, it doesn't have any quit in him.
Also, he's not going to retaliate because, one, he's in prison, and two, you break a prize fighter's leg.
No.
He's not having 2 more or 3 more movies.
Yeah. Clearly, he's not going to have a franchise after this.
Are you kidding me? He's doing vodka commercials. No. I'm sorry. He's doing sake commercials in Japan. Because that's where he's going to have to go now.
Yeah, that figures into an element that we didn't really touch on, was that when Michael Jai White agrees to fight Boyka for the second time, he does so with the caveat that he will get some extra resources, and he parlays that into purchasing snow coats for all the prisoners there.
Yes, that was nice.
It's kind of weird because they even have like an I am Spartacus moment where the one guy puts a coat on him when he's like strung up, like basically crucified out in the yard, and it shows like a earning of trust where it's like they're starting to see humility in this American guy, and he's returning it in kind. And what's kind of neat, it's really contrived and silly, but what I do like about that though is that it's not until he does that for the prisoners that Crot approaches him. Crot is in the background, the man in the wheelchair.
Yes.
He's introduced early in the film, but he doesn't become an element in the story until he sees that this guy has a heart, I guess.
I think the very beginning of the movie, I think it's Boyka we're introduced to first before Michael Jai White, correct?
I think so.
I think the first.
I think he's praying, and that's like the first shot we get of him.
What's the guy in the wheelchair's name?
Crot. Nikolai.
He trying to talk to him or something like that?
I don't think he was trying to talk to him. It was one of his handlers, one of his underlings. And he says, "Get the fuck out of here," which I think is a really terrible way to introduce a character who's in the middle of praying.
Yeah.
But I get it. They're trying to make it clear he's the bad guy.
Yeah.
But I do think that's a terrible way to introduce him.
Get the fuck out of here.
Oh.
Yeah, that accent's pretty funny.
It gets better.
Well,
it takes like 10 years.
I guess to bring it all full circle.
Yes. May as well.
I was surprised that I actually liked this movie.
Okay.
I don't want to see any more of these movies, please.
I'm sad.
But I get I think I get where you're coming from. I think that Scott Adkins is incredible in the fighting scenes. Like you can see that he's legit doing this.
Well, what something I hadn't mentioned is a big element of his success, I think. And I mean, this is a guy who has been doing this for years and only started to get like leading roles direct to video, like within the past 10 years. A big element of his success, again, bringing things back to wrestling, is that he came up, quote unquote, the right way. And that is, he wasn't the star. Yeah. He was the guy who falls down. So in wrestling, there's two ways to come up in the business. There's you get fingered from a crowd, you get a push, they call it. So you just get the management behind you, and they have confidence in you, and they put you out there because they know that you're hot shit, and it's like Steven Seagal, basically. So Steven Seagal, to me, is the ultimate example of someone who got the ultimate push. His first movie, he was the star of, and the entire script was tailored around his life story. I have the poster right over there, Above the Law.
Oh yeah, you're right.
That's his first movie, and the entire intro sequence of that movie is him at his dojo showing off his Aikido skills, and the way he got that role was some producer saw him doing an Aikido demonstration, thought he had this mystique about him, and thought he should be in movies. Yeah. And look where he is now. Scott Adkins, though, started out and had to pay his dues. Yeah. He wasn't the star. He was there to make the star look good. And to me, that's how you become a good martial arts performer in film, is that you first need to learn how to fall down before you can learn how to be the guy in charge. And that's what he does really well, is if you watch him like getting manhandled by Michael Jai White, he sells it. Yeah. Like he takes hits as good as he dishes them out. And that's true. Think of how many times you've seen Steven Seagal get hit in a movie. Oh gosh,
you never.
You can count on one hand.
One hand, how many times he's been hit.
That knife fight with Tommy Lee Jones, he gets a little nick on the eyebrow, and that's it.
That's the equivalent of that guy in 300 watching his son be decapitated. He just goes into berserker, just rage. Yeah. Yeah, you can't touch Steven Seagal. Like, it's just.
Yeah, to me, Scott Adkins, a lot of his talent comes from having been on both ends of it.
So would you say you picked this movie because, one, you wanted me to see...
I wanted you to start where I did.
Gotcha. And see, and to appreciate where he came from and where he got to and where he's at now.
Mostly I just wanted you to see things from the place that I came from, because I have better movies of his on my shelf. I could have easily given you one of those.
You could give me Boyka.
I mean, that movie's pretty fucking cool, dude. And the difference between that is that it came out like 10 years later, and now it's his movie. He's in 90% of the scenes. It's his story. It's not like Undisputed 2, where he just shows up when the script demands it. Okay. And it shows a massive difference in like confidence on the part of the director and the producers that okay, we can have this guy carry a movie, and he does it, I think, pretty successfully.
I don't even want to mention the last part where he gets. Yeah, it's just so stupid.
The long story short, man in wheelchair has like a granddaughter or a niece or something. Yeah, some female that he has to meet, and Michael Jai White wheels him out to a train station, cleans him up, hands him off to his niece or whatever, and then happily after.
Sequel set up. He gets money from the mob. He says, "I'm gonna fucking get you," and the mob, Gaga's like, "Okay, whatever." Yeah. But yeah, I actually, like I said, I enjoyed this more than I thought it was going to. I definitely see why you like Scott Adkins. He's crazy talented. Michael Jai White. This was after Spawn too, so like
he's one of those guys who just never took off as much as I think he should have. Because Black Dynamite's great fun.
I haven't seen Black Dynamite. That might be on the list here before long.
He's good in some of those like Tyler Perry movies.
I mean, is he in there?
Yeah,
I haven't seen a second of any.
Yeah, he's in a few of them. He's always good. It's just unfortunate that it seems like in terms of casting, just never got the right roles.
He's kind of more. I feel like he's more of an athlete than he is an actor. I feel like he's more talented as a martial artist than he is actually at acting. But I liked him in The Dark Knight. A little bit he was in there.
Yeah, he was good, and he's in Exit Wounds as the villain. He goes opposite Steven Seagal in that one.
I need to see more of his movies. I just want to end with my biggest problem of the movie.
Take it.
Which was let me see. I sent you a text yesterday because I actually forgot to write it down. I said, don't let me forget about toilet water potato vodka. So a lot of times in prison movies, you'll see there's a certain liquor or certain alcohol that they can make.
Yeah.
It's really high proof, and it's basically like a wine, toilet wine. But there's a fermenting process that makes it super duper strong. Probably more like not a port, because a port is actually mixed with brandy, so it actually has a distilled wine in it.
Okay.
But wine and liquor there are different methods in creating. So wine is essentially like making tea with yeast. Like you're basically steeping it into water, and you have yeast, which is activating alcohol. Anyway, but to make liquor, there's the distillation, which means you need heat. You actually have to heat it up. So when this guy is saying like this is potato vodka, I made it in the toilet. He's just saying like I made wine, because that's the only way you're gonna make it in the toilet. It's just a type of wine. I'm like, how does he make
potato wine in the toilet?
Yeah, he's like, how do you make potato vodka without distilling? You have to have the distilling process to make liquor, and I didn't see anything in his cell resembling distillation. So I was just like, I'm not a mathematician, but I don't think.
Well, that could have very easily played into like a goofy scene where like some hipster dude or something passes by and just like overhears, and then he comes back and puts his finger up and says, "Well, actually, I believe that is potato toilet wine."
Toilet wine, which has gotta taste disgusting.
This is potato toilet wine, and then they have to beat his ass because this is prison. You don't tell me what kind of booze I'm drinking.
Movie death. There's a few movie deaths, but my favorite, because I actually wasn't expecting it. I thought they were legit gonna let his manager go.
Oh yeah.
I think they might actually let him go. Like,
no, he was too slimy.
He gets into the car and headshot. As soon as he gets in, headshot.
Yeah, body count's very low in this movie, but that's a good one.
He gets macked. He gets
macked.
He gets macked. Like, you see the headshot and then the behind. It's better, but then again, this is like 20 years later.
20 years later, and like $50 million less. I mean, yeah, right. Come on, man. And how do you know they didn't just actually shoot a guy? This is Eastern Europe.
Yeah. That was the best movie death. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
I think that closes the book on Undisputed 2, Last Man Standing. Thank you very much for watching it. I'm glad I introduced you to Scott Adkins.
I was gonna have to eventually.
It had to happen. May as well start where I started.
So I'm actually next episode it will be most likely Trevor watching the movie that he hasn't seen yet. And you know what? We haven't quite gotten the format down, but I'm going to give you a choice on this one. And then we can figure out... On the spot. We can figure out what I'm going to have to watch after that. Okay. I'm going to give you the choice between The Counselor, which I really, really like. It was
directed by Ridley Scott, starring Michael Fassbender and everyone else.
Everybody else. Yeah. I really liked it. It wasn't received well.
General consensus is that it's garbage.
I really enjoyed it, but we'll see. The other one, because we mentioned it, and you've actually seen the third movie, Green Street Hooligans, because that is Frodo Baggins and the guy from Sons of Anarchy. I can never remember his name. Not Channing Tatum, basically,
Hunnam?
Charlie Hunnam.
Charlie Hunnam.
Charlie Hunnam.
The most jacked gothic horror star ever. Like, have you seen the Crimson Peak movie?
No, is he in that?
Yes.
Ooh, is that?
It's fun.
That
Guillermo?
It is Guillermo
del Toro.
I knew I should have watched it.
He's in there, and it takes place at a certain point in history where I'm pretty sure dudes didn't have physiques like that.
Interesting.
And he's like, he's in like button-ups and vests the whole movie, so he's just like...
They ate pies and smoked pipes, man. You didn't have a six-pack.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is the age of the consumption, where it's like, I drank too much and I died.
I'll give you the option between The Counselor and Green Street Hooligans.
I'm picking The Counselor.
All right. Okay, so next time it will be Trevor catching up on The Counselor.
Okay, well, we'll see you next time to catch up on cinema.
All right.